the third panel discussion of the day. Again, a very interesting topic on the emerging asset classes, where we talk about South India's big winners, warehousing, industrial, and data parks. So can we have the panel slide for our speakers? So let me welcome our moderator of the session, Mr. Mayank Saksena, MD and CEO, Land Services, Anarock Property Consultants. Mayank has over 18 years of experience in real estate consulting, and he manages the portfolio with strong leadership and interpersonal skills. Some of his key projects were with Allcargo Corp by Blackstone, acquisition of prime residential space at Surajpur, AIG disposition of IndoSpace to Ambuja, which are just some of the major projects that I am mentioning here. So thank you, Mayank, for being here with us and to chairing this session. Let me introduce our speakers in an alphabetical order. Mr. Anshul Singh, Managing Director, Welspun One Logistics Parks. Mr. Singhal has over 15 years of leadership experience in the infrastructure and real estate sector, with a track record of establishing 5 new businesses from the ground up for 3 large corporates. So, he has held CEO and director positions for Blackstone, Warburg Pincus, and Brookfield investing companies. So, a huge amount of experience that he brings to the discussion today. Our next speaker, Darshan Hiranandani, Managing Director, Hiranandani Group. He heads the real estate operations in Dubai, and he's the CEO of the energy operations globally and plays an advisory role in the real estate operations in India. Darshan also plays a key role in Hiranandani communities that is committed to developing 100 million square feet between its Chennai, Panvel, and Alibag townships. And we all know they are also now coming up with huge data parks across the cities of India. Our next eminent speaker, Mr. Captain K. Srinivas, CEO, Cornerstone Property Developers. Captain Srinivas is responsible for the overall strategy and execution for the company's development plans, targeting maximum profitability and cost effectiveness across commercial, residential, retail, industrial, and warehousing sectors. He also spearheads the company's sales and marketing portfolio and is a real estate planning and development leader with 2 decades of experience and expertise in planning, sources, and delivery of real estate across India and global markets. We now introduce our next panel member, Mr. R.K. Narayan, COO, Allcargo Logistics and Industrial Parks. R.K. Narayan leads Allcargo Logistics and Industrial Park business, which has significant pan-India presence and is responsible for various business verticals, developments, business development, operations, marketing and leasing, property management, and overall asset management. A veteran of the industry, he has overall 25 years of experience in real estate investment, asset management, and investment banking. A very warm welcome to Mr. Narayan. Our next panel member, Mr. Sharad Gohil, Managing Director, Asset Management, IndoSpace Capital Advisors. At IndoSpace, Sharad oversees the performance and management of IndoSpace Core, a USD 1.2 billion JV with Canadian pension plan, where his primary responsibilities include managing and reporting performance in the board of directors. In addition to the core platform, he is responsible for the overall performance management of each of the development funds across the business as well as exits. He has over 20 years of experience in real estate, specializing in asset management and investments across core, value-add, and development real estate sectors in the UK, Europe, and India. So a prolific experience that Mr. Gohil brings to the table to this discussion. Our final panel member, I introduce Mr. Sudeep Aditya, Managing Director and co-founder, Oakbridge Asset Partners. Sudeep Aditya brings proven expertise across the commercial realty spectrum, from fundraising, cross-border transactions, mergers and acquisitions, developer relations, project development, and asset management. Sudeep also founded and oversees S1 Holdings, an investment and technology venture development firm. So a great panel that we have today. Can we have our speakers on the screen now? Fantastic. So Mayank, it's all yours. I hand it over to you for the great discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Sabna. And, thank you for getting such eminent speakers on this, panel. Also, I was just wondering that I felt it was done so intentional that, immediately after the office space, you are hosting, a panel session on warehousing and data centers. And when I was looking back our notes, we realized that interestingly from February 21st of 2020 till April 7th, so almost like the period when the lockdown had happened and the world was suffering through, the COVID, we realized that in the US markets, especially in the REITs, the valuations drop across different assets. Data center was only 3%. And imagine on the other side, on the other spectrum, hospitality was 35%. So there was like a huge drop from, imagine to a 35% to a 3%. So resilient was this particular asset class. And the warehousing space, was hardly 15%, whereas the office space was 25%. And here I, have the privilege of being with such eminent panelists, focusing on this business. So I thought, I'll directly, without taking much time, shoot to some of the, panelists in terms of the what kind of views do they have now post-COVID, where in Indian real estate market, warehousing, industrial, and data centers are becoming a very important play. Going forward, Mr. Captain Srinivas, I would like to ask my first question to you, because I understand your group has been one of the largest land aggregator groups in Bangalore, and whenever anybody needs land, we straight jump to you. So my request to you is to understand your views that you guys have been creating such large land banks and portfolios in the Indian real estate spectrum, especially in the Bangalore case, right? What is your focus on the development of the logistic parks? So I know that I've been understanding that you are developing a logistic park of close to 160 acres in Whitefield and 300 acres in North Bangalore. Now, the land values vary drastically. A lot of times the land values make it very difficult, for warehousing to come and happen in, normal land could be used for residential or for commercial development. So what are your views in terms of how you people are managing, and what is your strategy in terms of going forward and giving your land parcels for warehousing and not for, residential or commercial space?
Thank you very much. So thanks very much and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on the show, Sapna. To start with, Mayank, I'll just try and tweak that first statement of yours. We like to be known as investors of land parcels rather than aggregators, right? So, and there is a specific purpose behind that. However, I think, as you are aware, we do have land parcels across the city, and our strategy has basically been horses for courses, right? Whatever is the best asset class that can come up in those particular, looking at the location advantages that it provides. And the group has fairly been very forward thinking in terms of planning its assets, right? Whether it is, assets to support the logistics, warehousing, and industrial real estate, which, primarily is around this 648, and in the strategic hubs. We've tried to be very strategic in terms of where these land parcels are acquired. Having said that, outside of the industrial asset class, we are also present on the other asset classes in commercial, residential, as well as retail. And we have different strategies for each of them at a corporate level. Now, I think as investors who hold on to land, one of the prime things for us is the right monetization plans for each of the parcels, right? And some of these areas also lend themselves to an integrated approach. So we do not want to lose out on the maximization of the, by unlocking the potential, by bringing in different asset classes. There are some, like you said, the large parks that we are working on developing are primarily oriented towards logistics and warehousing and, industrial real estate. So, it is a significantly time-consuming process, not just to get the land in place, but also to walk through the, approvals as well as finding the right partner. So our approach has been, work on what we are good at and bring in players who are good at the other aspect to help us monetize those assets. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Captain. I think very rightly placed that, this segment was missing in our country in the pre-RERA times, and now we started seeing this segment coming. We're seeing across country, and what you said that yours is an investment company probably is more bothered for the returns than the asset class and the usage. So, thank you for that. Coming to Darshan, Darshan, you guys have been in real estate for last 4 decades. You guys are known for doing some best of quality developments in various asset classes. It can be hospitality, it can be healthcare, it can be commercial, it can be residential. Now you guys have also entered into the data center space with Yota coming in Panvel, right? I would request to understand that what are your views behind this thought process of getting quickly into the data center space? Is it COVID led strategy, or this was pre-thought and it was already on the end?
Sure. So Mayank, I think few different bits and history. We had been building data centers for last 7 years, and we were building them for people who are competing with us today. So the largest data center player in India, we've actually built, let's say, almost 80% of their product was built by us. So we knew this space well. About 2 years ago, I was expecting a huge deluge of data demand. At that time, of course, the focus was much more in terms of, with Geo coming up, what's the kind of data creation that's happening, with the cloudification in the West success, what's happening. And there were initial talks at that time about localizing data. So I said, this is going to be big. So I went to them and I said, listen, guys, you guys have plans, but why don't we work together to make your plans go 10x? They were, with all fairness to them, they were doing some restructuring of their own. And, there was no real feedback and push. And so last April, we created a full team. Sunil Gupta is the CEO of that team. And he's formerly was the CEO of NTT. And we really pushed hard and we said, listen, let's create best in class, best in the world, most economical, most sophisticated. And even though these were very difficult challenges, we actually achieved it. So in July this year, we actually completed Asia's largest Tier 4 data center. And this is Uptime certified Tier 4. First building itself, 50 megawatts. Whole country today has 400 megawatts of data centers. So the first building itself consumes 50 megawatts of power. The Panvel campus already has power and approvals to do 200 plus megawatts, with an expansion plan of 1 gig in Panvel itself. We've done a similar. We're starting a similar ramp up in Chennai. We've got most of our approvals in place. We have to do some realignment because of the Chennai-Salem Expressway, but putting that point apart, we should be starting work very, very soon. And we'll see that happening in Chennai as well. And that, again, is a phase 1, 250 megawatt approval. First building 40 megawatts, hit hard and move ahead. Similarly, in India, we've got the land, we've got most of the permitting. I got my environmental clearance also about 3 weeks ago, and we've got consent to establish currently underway. So we're hoping that by the beginning, in the month of January itself, work will start at full speed, and there we are committed to give space to our first customer by middle of 22. So that's also a strong roadmap and plan. So we've gone full steam ahead. And COVID has just highlighted it. I don't think that if anything is being reactive because of COVID. Only difference is, I think that in the beginning stage, every company puts their own data on the server room in their office. As we evolve stages, you start looking at, okay, I'm going to take some data center space in a data center, but I'm going to operate and manage it. And then you, of course, slowly evolve where you say, I'll just completely go to the cloud. So our job, or the team's job, is to really take stage 2 to stage 4 entirely. So actually the story for us is, it's a real estate play. Of course, it's very capital intensive. It's more capital intensive than putting up 5-star hotels of similar square footage. So it costs much more money than that on a per square foot basis. But it's much more about the value add services that we provide to our customers in terms of managed services that Indian customers expect. So, like on a global player like Amazon, who's the largest in India in terms of cloud today, actually doesn't give you any customized services. You can't speak to an Amazon tech person. You can only write them an email and you'll hear back in 24 hours. So there's a bit of a differentiator and a creation there that we've done. But it's seen good success. I think since July till today, we officially started billing customers from the 1st of September, and we've migrated 100 enterprises already. And the pace is continuing. We've done some deals with some hyperscalers, continuing. So there's excitement there. But you know what? There's also excitement in our industrial space that we've expanded into, which we are now taking forward with Blackstone. But in that space, we're doing something unique in that we're actually trying to build some sector-specific niche and sector-specific park. So our Chennai location, actually, we're trying to create it to specialize for wind. So we've got one wind manufacturer in, we've got 10 ancillaries, we've got another wind manufacturer coming in, we've got another 5 ancillaries. So we're putting it all together. So the idea is that the person or the companies gain much more than it's not just about space, it's about creating an ecosystem, about optimizing the ecosystem. And we've also taken a bit of a hit. So we are actually, reserving space for people in that sector and saying that, no, you come in and we want only this type of industry so that everybody benefits from each other. So I think specialization and specialized industrial infrastructure will also have a big role to play, especially with the way India looking to ramp up manufacturing. And that's an area that we're strategically working towards. And I think our Chennai park will be a good example of the direction we're going to take.
Great, Darshan. I think so. You guys are always ahead of the curve. I think everyone in real estate fondly remembers the Powai township turning around because of you guys. And now we see the data industry, and now on the on the industrial side. I think there's a great jump. Otherwise, everyone in real estate remembers old, dirty industrial areas, right? And I think what you're talking is so drastic. And interestingly, on a panel, we've got 3 competitors to you. I don't know, the other 3 have to say that they are competing with you or not. But with that, I would like to go to Anshul.
Mayank, I must warn you though. Our background comes from the residential space where we only have 2 lakh competitors countrywide. So when you say I've got 3 competitors, it seems like a very small population set to compete with. So it's an industry that works quite well with each other. I don't see that as an issue.
Great, but very right you said that, because frankly, this is a moving from residential to now to data center to warehousing and the industrial. Probably it will be more cohesive, and that frankly brings me to Anshul, because I think so. Anshul, all the guys on the panel envy you. You don't grow old. You remain like the way you were 10 years before, and you get to do such sexy stuff, While you are putting up, such large industrial parks with Embassy, you move to, Welspun, you're doing Welspun 1. I probably not only on the panel, but a lot of people in the, real estate industry also must be envying you for that. But what is the story which you guys are now doing? Your first park is going to be up in Bhiwandi. So what is Welspun 1 is going to go and do?
Thank you, Mayank. You should tell my wife that I don't grow old. She thinks completely otherwise, and I hope people don't envy me, because I actually look up to most of the people on the panel very much, especially Darshan and his dad. A lot. RK has been a much more experienced player in this space, and so is Sharad. I don't know Sudeep, captain, of course, we all know. So, very, very humbled to be part of this panel. And, Mayank, you and Shobit and Anuj are always mentors to me. So we try to keep it simple. Maybe we make it sound a little more sexy than it is, but we try to keep it simple. We build large scale grade A industrial and warehousing parks, similar to what Sharad and RK do. Uh, the I guess the difference in the way we approach it is, we focus on being not the largest or the biggest company in India. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be the most preferred warehousing company in India. What I mean by the word preferred is, if there are two parks next to each other, I want to be the choice first. And how I want to be that choice is, I want to be able to offer the customer the functional requirements to suit his business. And that's been our philosophy in the new avatar. I started One Industrial Spaces in July of 2019, a year and a half back. I founded that company. Welspun backed us. We combined the names. It's called Welspun One. Now we've launched our first 1,000 crore project in Bhiwandi, which is a 2.6 million square feet project, 110 acres. We've leased 1 million square feet officially over there, but unofficially, I can tell you we're pretty much done there. We have another million odd coming up very soon. So we would have, in a year's time, we would have, in pandemic, built a 32-member team, leased a couple of 1 million square feet. We've signed four or five new locations across the country. We're also launching our fund very soon. So we've done a lot in the last 1 year. The focus will remain locations to solve the location needs of our customers. We want to focus more on warehousing, less on industrial parks. Warehousing gives us the scale. Industrial parks will happen by chance, in terms of, if there are locations like what Darshan has in Chennai. I think that's a fantastic strategy. You do need a large land bank for that, which they have. In Chakan and Chennai are two locations which support industrial growth. It's taken a bit of hit because of the auto recently. The auto has not been doing that well, but I think that will catch up. It's a cycle like everything else. So yeah, we try to keep it simple. We want to stick to the core business. Our expertise is three things: buy, build, lease, and then eventually exit it. That's it. Three simple things. If we do these three things well, everything else will take care of itself. If we don't do one of these three things properly, then everything else will fall apart. So I guess that's the focus. That's what we do, and that's what we hope to continue doing.
Great, Anshul. That brings me to Mr. RK Narayan, because interestingly, imagine, I've been in this space from last 18 years, and whenever warehousing and industrial used to come, I used to try to run away, because I always found this space to be super difficult to meet the demand in terms of pricing, in terms of the infra, in terms of facility. I would love to hear from Mr. Narayan that you people have been in this space for last 27 years, and then you have also forayed into the industrial space. How do you see the evolution of this sector over the period of time? And then do you really think that India as a country, with whatever is happening in the industrial warehousing space, will really be a 5 trillion economy at some point in time, or this is just a dream?
No, it certainly is not a dream. Otherwise, I'm sure we are all dreamers, but dreamers which is for reality, not dream for dream's sake. And so just a caveat that I would put: yes, my organization has been in the logistics space for 27 years, since 1993, and in the warehousing space since the last 2-3 years. So I would perhaps add more on the warehousing space, because my stint also here has been for the last 2 years. I mean, not just the company, but in this space as well. So Anshul is more experienced than me, definitely, on the warehousing space and the industrial space. But yes, so mostly doing real estate on the other side, whether residential, commercial, or retail. But I think I probably stepped into the right time, and as far as the logistic park is concerned, since the last couple of years. But still, to speak on behalf of my organization, as far as the logistics is concerned, let me try to do a justice to it. I think pretty much the story of Allcargo is the story of the logistics space, and the story going forward also pretty much reflects that. I think the whole importance of organized, institutionalized, professional, tech-enabled logistics, that need has been felt. It was always there, but felt, and given bigger importance to is during this pandemic time, right? I mean, that has been the backbone, except for the first couple of months, where I guess everyone was trying to figure out what's the way out, etc., what's the best way. But thereafter, there has been no looking back as far as logistics and transportation and freight movements, etc., is concerned. I mean, we ourselves, Allcargo started in 1993 with just a cargo handler here in JNPT. From then on, we have become an integrated logistics solution provider to customers around the globe, with presence in 160 countries and providing end-to-end solutions. Right from ocean freight to air freight to present LCLs or FCLs, even project logistics. And now with collaboration and acquisition of majority stake in Gati, there are other small parcels, etc., etc. All those also express logistics, last mile deliveries, all those things also have come into picture. So we truly are end-to-end logistics solution provider. On the warehousing side, also, Allcargo does contract logistics, third-party logistics, does warehousing management, and now the warehousing. That's been the latest addition. Before Gati. So pretty much, fortunate actually in that sense, for us to be pretty much close to the, having our eyes and ears open, very close to the customers from multiple touch points, not necessarily from, storage and industrial requirement perspective. So that way, it's fortunate to be here, and that's enabled us to come to, this stage. So to your question as to how do we see this sector, logistics as a broadly, and then warehousing. Logistics, yes, as I said, everybody is looking to this sector to grow. Even the government of India is giving a major thrust to it. It can easily grow. It's forecasted to grow at 10-11% on a per annum basis minimum. We all know that the amount of investment required in the, even a $500 billion investments over the next, say, 4-5 years would be short, given where we are today. All it requires is, I think, more organization will happen, more consolidation could happen, more niche players could be there, more tech-enabled supporting from high manual handling, which still persists. Then it moves more towards automation, system-oriented. That's the direction. You know very well that government is giving a big-time push of creating a separate department itself, separate wing itself under the Department of Commerce, and the government of India focusing on, things like the dedicated freight corridors, going to come up shortly with the national logistics policy. So those are the steps in the right direction. Even the players also, you are seeing more and more investment from the institutional investors, international investors, domestic companies. So they both definitely for the next many years. You can't even point out whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but this story is really going to be very long. And so is the case with warehousing. I mean, you pointed, mentioned earlier to Darshan about that there are competition here. Frankly, I think at this point of time, there is enough, for every one of us. Maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, when supply reaches a certain point. But at this point of time, I'm sure everybody on this panel will agree that there is enough for everyone to do. If Anshul has done 102 acres, I'm sure he would be looking at another 100 acres. We could be looking at another 100 acres. Darshan would be looking at another 100 acres. And we're not saying just because another guy is looking at 100 acres, then the question comes, should we look at that 100 acres? I don't think so. That question is there today, right? It's more about, who's able to get it rather than, should we in fact even go for it? So enough of opportunity available. That's the direction that I would put that, yes, it's there for the long haul.
Great, Mr. Narayan. I think very rightly put across. And, for our country to really become a large economy, in the globe, until the logistics, the industrial and the, data center and warehousing supports it, this can't be a, dream realizer. Coming to that, and you spoke about capital, and interestingly, we've got Sharad, with us on the panel. So Sharad, in your experience in India, we have seen close to $18.7 billion coming in from almost 2016 to 2020 in 4 years span. And, if you look at of that, 592 million had come into the warehousing space. How do you see the trend going forward? Will you see the trend jumping forward when people realize, and which is a very important data, right? That in US post-COVID, probably the asset classes which are getting least affected or very resilient asset classes are the asset classes which are there in data center, industrial, logistics, warehousing. So what is your view on this?
Firstly, Mayank, thank you very much for having me on the panel. It's an honor, especially with my fellow guests here also on. So thank you very much. It's really, I'm looking forward to the discussion. Now going straight to your question, I think, look, traditionally, when we looked at commercial real estate as an investment asset class, normally offices or retail or even hotels were the primary allocations in India, and logistics followed it subsequently. I think what we've witnessed during the pandemic, not just in India, but globally, was, and it was mentioned earlier on, the resilience, or what I would say the defensive nature of industrial warehousing assets, of it being really the least impacted sector across all of the various other real estate classes. And especially when you compare it to, say, how retail is performing today. What we're seeing, I think, e-commerce growth, private consumption, industrial activity, continued infrastructure push are going to, continue to remain the key drivers of logistics as an asset class in India. And we do feel that this sector is going to continue to attract a larger pool of institutional capital, for sure. And more importantly, because of its ability to withstand the shock that we've really seen to the system over the last 9 to 12 months. I think we're also, seeing a greater allocation of capital towards warehousing by global investment managers as well. Really tapping into that defensive nature on how this is really performing compared to the real estate classes. And you're talking about new age assets as well. I think with an increasing pull towards automation, value add activities, inside warehouses, not just really simple storage providing, but I think additional amenities that have been provided, facilities for workers. I think lastly, which I'm sure is quite hot on the topic of many institutions, ESG. I think there's a continued focus on ESG as well as these other factors that I've mentioned in. These are all driving the need to continue to create new age assets. Traditional buildings are not capable of supporting new age requirements. What we find is modifications or upgradations are sometimes economically unviable in many of the cases. So I think there's going to be a continued push for sure, and certainly a trend. You've obviously heard data centers being mentioned and talked about in a lot of detail, but I think certainly for the foreseeable future, this is an asset class that will continue to attract this type of capital.
Great. Thank you, Sharad. With that, I would like to ask Sudeep, because until you people had the conviction, you will not be able to convince the capital to move into those asset classes. Especially if you look at, in just last 9 months, Indian economy has seen $1.2 billion of investment, which has come into it. Bulk of shares still goes into the either mixed use or the office space. The trend now moving, maturing, like the way office space had matured in India, and we've seen 2 REIT listing happening so quickly. Do you see a similar activity in the alternate, real estate side, be it co-working, be it living, be it industry, be it warehousing? How long do you see that all these asset classes will be alternate and they'll become mainstream? What's the time lag between becoming from alternate to mainstream?
This is my first time on such an esteemed panel where practically everyone is way more accomplished and experienced than me. So I'm going to take 30 seconds to introduce our firm, and then I'll get to the answer. So we are a real estate investment bank. My co-founder Ricky and me have predominantly banking and technology expertise. We are newbies in real estate specifically, and in our 3-year journey, we've been focused mostly on the Bangalore market. We have raised roughly about $200 million for developers here. And we have done, and since we are not a large firm like one of the big investment banks or IPCs, we prefer to focus on niche. In the last 3 years, it's predominantly been financing and distressed. In the next couple of years, I see us continuing focusing on distressed, but also on data centers, because I have a technology background. I understand that space, and we believe that there's enough action going to be in data centers. So coming to the specific question, the two REITs have been extremely well received in India. Many people thought that there was a lot of skepticism before the first REIT. Then in March, when there was a crash in the markets, there was doubts whether the REIT would hold up. But it's worked very well. In fact, I think the REIT has worked much better for institutional investors than retail investors. Though, of course, the benefit to the retail investor, as everyone knows, is that you can buy into a REIT with, I think, $700, 50,000 rupees, you can be a co-owner. Whereas if you go to a builder and ask for a commercial property, he may charge you a few crores for, and then you have to maintain it and things like that. For institutions, it's been a double plus, I would say, because most of the foreign portfolio investors, the foreign institutional investors, have access to very, very low cost capital. They are borrowing, they're probably putting $10 in equity, borrowing $90 at 2% interest rate or 3%, and they are getting a yield of 7.5% risk-free. Most of the portfolio of the two listed REITs are Fortune 500 companies with multi-year leases, escalation. So a lot of these funds, they could be pension funds, institutions of various kinds, insurance firms, have stellar returns since the two listed REITs. So I don't see that going down. In fact, they've done way better than the face value that you see, the 8% return doesn't capture the total return they've got, because if you add the leverage and the less amount of capital and the spread, many of them are making probably twice that much or more. So unless there are issues with tenants vacating, which was a doubt when COVID hit, people thought, our office is going to shut down, or is that uncertainty behind us? Yes, for sure. Most of the REITs have 98% rent collection. So I don't see the risk there. The risk can only be, or you can say the shift value migration will mostly be that office building may temper down a little. And, in terms of capital allocation, the smart money will probably go more towards, warehousing and data centers. And, the esteemed panelists are in that sector, and I don't see that changing. So to summarize, I'd say if you ask for a timeline, I think co-living is a little too early. There's not enough scale, and it's a business that's yet to attain critical mass. Amongst the new emerging alternate sectors, I'd say the sector that the panelists are, warehousing is one that will be primed for a listing along with malls. So in India, you have Phoenix and the others who have a mall-focused portfolio. That is next. And after that, I think after about half a decade or 7 years, you'll see emergence of data center REITs, both of which are really future ready, because in the post-COVID world, e-commerce benefits, warehousing, all sorts of data consumption help data centers. So these are future ready sectors, and if you had $5, you'd probably put 2 each in these and $1 in office. So that's the allocation, and definitely India offers REIT potential for these as well.
Great, Sudeep. So with that, Darshan, I would like to ask you. You guys decided not to go for office REIT. Are you guys trying to go for a data center REIT in near future?
Let me put it this way: the answer is no. We have, to be honest, no intention to reach that space as we currently see it, because we usually REIT or we usually exit either where we don't have enough capital for our growth plans, or we feel that there's somebody else who could take the baton on much better, and we have better uses of that capital. If I were to look at the story, I would say the last decade was a decade for commercial. Commercial ruled the roost. I think you'll be surprised that 2 parts will come out. I think this decade is back to residential. That's my forecast. It's a different forecast, but it's still a forecast. It's going to be back to residential, and it's going to be back with a bang. And you're going to see people who are best brands in the resi space really moving forward at a furious pace. It's going to be something that you haven't seen in a while. I'll come to the second part of a bit of the discussion. When you were asking Mr. Narayan about the $5 trillion dream, I'll tell you something. Before implementing anything, you have to dream it. So dreaming it is important. After that, you have to plan it and figure out all the reasons why you can't make it happen. And you have to work on each of those reasons, solve it, and only then it happens. So I think the discussion is healthy. Let everybody come out with every reason why 5 trillion can't happen in the timeline. Only then we'll know what we have to do to make it happen. So I think that's an important piece, and that remains as it is. I personally think that we if 5 trillion has to happen, India has to be competitive to make it happen. So you must remember, when you're really talking about being a global player, you are competing, let's say let's say a company is looking at an opportunity. I want to put up a new regional manufacturing hub. Should I put it up in India? Should I put it up in Vietnam? Should I put it up in Thailand? Should I put it up in Indonesia? And every company evaluates those options, right? I'm talking about non-China options right now because that's the flavor of the of this year. But when they look at it, even China would be an alternative. And if you think that not being ready, not having invested, not having progressed to a certain point is going to allow you to either capitalize on the opportunity as your entity or allow the country to capitalize on the opportunity of bringing it in, we are all fooling ourselves. So I think that's an extremely important piece to remember, that this whole push from the government is not for any other reason, but from the fact that if 5 trillion has to happen, plug and play competitive space of different kinds, different niches, different locations. Whether somebody's focusing on 3PL, somebody's focusing on e-commerce, somebody's focusing on industrial, somebody's focusing on a niche. You have to have all of those ready because that's the global market that's out. When you look at why did I get into data? I'll tell you why I got into data, because the demand was so high. We just saw data center space cost in Mumbai go through the roof. And I must tell you that today, I have intentionally brought that cost down by 27%. So my competition has a tier 3 data center, I have a tier 4. I've got the cheapest cost of power. We have built our own discom, got the license, many years to do that. So we are the power distribution company in our entire area. But I told my guys, I said, listen, I don't care what their benchmark is. I want best in class. I want cheapest. I don't go telling me that, oh, cost of space. Now we will get, 100, somebody contracted a large deal, $110 a kilowatt. Let us plan every year 3% escalation. I said, none of that. I said, I want you guys to hit this year, I want you guys to hit a $70 a kilowatt. That's our target number. Let's keep going down so we can scale up. That's the telecom story. We had MTNL, and when the first mobile phone came, it was 16 rupees 80 paisa a minute. How many of us could use that? I remember it used to be like a big boxy phone. People used to think about when they're going to hit send, when they're going to hit end. I mean, think about that story, right? Telecom cost came down, minutes ramped up. Same thing here, right? So we've got to make this work. How does it work? Focus, technology. But for the customer, it's still keep it simple and stupid. I still got to give them a great product. Everything needs to work. Everything needs to happen. I need to handhold them. I need to navigate the system. So I just wanted to say that, look, we are responsible, and more people have to come into this sector, because India's $5 trillion story is hinging on us building infrastructure of all kinds. So that's where this lies.
Correct. Great, Darshan. And frankly, I also believe that this decade is going to be for residential. From the lockdown, from the time it opened, we are doing crazy amount of residential sales across country, unimaginable. At times when I look back, I get surprised that, how come suddenly so much of capital is just flowing into the residential space. And it's like just lapping whatever is coming their way. So, I feel like as all real estate developers, we need to do more and more in that space. And probably, the last 4-5 years have not been easy. So there's been a lot of cleansing that has already happened. So the people who remain in this space, the best man gets all. It's like that right now. But then, and I also respect and appreciate that, the data cost has to come down, because a lot of time, I have seen the kind of checks that data center guys are ready to cut for lands has been astronomical. I've seen the land prices going off the roof just because people decided that this is a location which is going to make sense, and the land prices move from say 10 crores to 20 crores per acre in a span of 3 months, 6 months. This is like something as if is going wrong in that space. But Darshan, what was the strategy of you guys going to Greater Noida and not coming to Bangalore?
Oh yeah, I think it wasn't a very difficult decision for us. There were the two locations where submarine cables come in is Mumbai and Chennai, and the fiber connectivity between Chennai and Bangalore is excellent. So you've got almost 1 millisecond type latency. But the market in Delhi, in terms of the user side, has grown at such a pace without any data centers that we thought it was important to get a base there. Because you see, for the customer, it makes sense to be in two locations. Either you're right where the cable lands, or you're right where the consumer is. So people who got consumers in Bombay are lucky they've got a cable and a consumer. People who are in Chennai are lucky they've got a cable and a consumer. And I think Bombay and Chennai will continue to eat up the west and the south demand primarily because you'll be surprised for people that the latency cost is as much as the data center cost. So every kilometer they move away from that is going to cost them more money. So further and further away places have to spend more and more and more to beat that situation. But a lot of people will succeed in the edge strategy. I think those will happen as well. But Delhi, we found that we did some research. There was an extremely concentrated user base, and there are a lot of companies who've spoken to us who want to mirror their needs of Mumbai and Delhi. So that's the strategy we went with, and I think we're going to show some great example of success there, and move it forward. But our strategy is a little different from a lot of other people. Our strategy is extremely scale driven. So we go actually bigger than, our scale is like 15-year requirement of Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, the Indian players all combined that could be required for that macro market and continue to invest and bring down costs there. So, and the thing is like, our family has a little different strategy. Again, we are not focused on being the biggest or the fastest or whatever, but we always play a very long-term play. So we continue to take an area, build it, nurture it, maximize it, and I at least get the liberty of I have to deliver high returns, but they allow me to amortize that over a very, very long period of time. So that's something that's a very different kind of approach that we're allowed to put in any development. So whether we build a mixed-use township, whether we do a data center park, in Panvel, it's actually a bit of both. There's the residential and there's the data center and the commercial and everything all put together.
Great, Darshan. So with that, I would like to ask Captain a 5 trillion dream, and probably you need to suggest that in South, we have been hearing about this Chennai-Bangalore industrial corridor, which has been from the time the Tamil Nadu government had initiated it, and it's been like 2011, and there's been crazy amount of delays, and which I feel not only in South, but across country, it may be Dwarka Expressway, it can be that and all that. So what are your views on this, and how these projects could benefit and further develop with the logistics and warehousing sector coming in strongly back?
So Mayank, just allow me to just take a segue on where Darshan left on the data center space, which is also something that is part of our corporate strategy, considering that, land, like you said, plays a very important role in terms of placement of the right kind of data centers, and it works on the business model. Now, having worked on the occupier side, have actually built the data centers that Darshan alluded to a little while earlier on the client side, right? Now, this data center migration for many of the corporates is one of the top agendas for CIOs, CTOs, chief risk officers, chief digital officers. But there's been, there's not been a great momentum for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, annual operating budgets play a big role in terms of the refresh costs are high. So the migration does happen. But, this is like what is happening on the managed space side. This is the specialization. This is backed by FMS of the highest uptime levels. So this is something which is definitely an expectation that will be realized. And coupled with the facts that Indian consumer is adopting technology to such an extent, and the data localization, that is expected to bring in so much of data within the country, for the first copy and second copy at least. I think those are going to be, large drivers for the data center asset class. And we, as part of our corporate strategy, do want to include that, and we're in discussions with many of the operators who can partner with us for those same, including Government of Karnataka, right? I mean, they play a large role in bringing some of these data center policies, as well as supporting, for dark fibers and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, I think that will be an asset class that we are very, keen on. Now, coming back to your other question in terms of Chennai-Bangalore corridor, I think infrastructure, of any kind, is the backbone of growth, right? I mean, and we heard, the minister talk about no tolls coming up in the next couple of years. So some of these are very, very progressive steps in the right direction, right? I mean, if we have to get to the dream that, the dream number that you talked about, it'll have to be broken down, like Darshan also said, it'll have to be broken down into smaller project-based decision making in terms of how do we approach that. Now, I think the corridor, what it will do for us is the seaport connectivity that it will provide to the South India, because it's a collaboration between 3 states. And, one of those big ones, which is the Delhi-Mumbai corridor replica in the south, it is definitely going to be an extremely vibrant and useful infrastructure corridor, which will also help upgrade the road infrastructure as well as the rail infrastructure, and also provide a port connectivity within, the Kerala side, on the Kochi side, as well as on Chennai. So all of these aspects, considering the massive investments and focus that the government is doing in allied services, as well as policy making to support the infrastructure and logistics and industrial real estate policies, are going to drive. This is going to be a great support. And we believe that, this corridor is definitely going to be adding that missing link to improve the connectivity within the south of India.
Thank you, Captain. Sharad, coming to you, you guys have been holding such a large industrial and logistics investment in India. What is your opinion on, such corridors, or, do you guys look at these sectors as where you guys are going to further keep on cutting checks and investing and doing, investments?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say amassing a portfolio of over 40 million square feet since 2007 has been a long haul. I think that, yes, we are continuously paying close attention on the regulatory framework that's being rolled out across India. It's only going to help. I think there's a significant infrastructure push by the government, and that's only going to improve connectivity. It's only going to improve the demand side of things, and hopefully the rental values going forward. But yeah, look, I think that we're already in the top 8 to 9 markets. I think the continued push in infrastructure and connectivity is centered around those key hubs. We've already obviously mentioned Chennai, Oragadam in particular, Jharkhand and Pune. These are the key kind of industrial and manufacturing hubs that we see across India. And I think we'll continue to invest further and build out our parks as and when that demand continues to
And Sharad, before I go to the next speaker, I would love to know, when are you guys planning to get into the REIT market? When do investors in India get to buy, a small portion of the warehousing REIT?
Look, I think for now, we had previously explored REIT options. I think for now, it's a question of wait and see how the REIT is received from the public going forward. Right now, you just have a couple of REITs, in particular in one sector. And I think it's important to see how that plays out amongst the cycle. So for us, there's no urgent rush to be looking at a public listing of our portfolios. We've got an operational portfolio which currently probably meets the required, I would say, minimum threshold of stabilized assets that get there. But it's not something that for the foreseeable or short-term future we're looking at. Rather, we'd like to see how the rest of the assets perform over a longer term.
So you're going to make the investors some more time, Sharad.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm saying, Sharad, you're going to make all the investors wait for some more time before they get the flavor of warehousing REIT. With that, Anshul, what is your view? You've seen so much of movement happening in this space, and you've seen also new groups coming into this space. How do you see the future, and how do you see the movement that has happened? So imagine commercial office space moving, getting so structured, doing great job, getting into REIT, opening it, and getting so much of the public money now entering into it. What's your view on the warehousing side?
So see, to talk about the future, it's important to touch upon the roots of the sector, right? Where it started, where it grew, where we come from as a space in warehousing. So warehousing is a fancy word, right? We actually go down guys, right? Back in the day, it used to be called godam. People used to not even call it godams. And godams in India were like dirty places. There used to be crimes happening. You used to see all these, low end back of the day movie shoots happening there. They were no better than slums when you go there. There was no hygiene. It was literally low lit buildings, 100% non-compliant. From there on, as consumption grew, people started realizing that you need more storage facilities. You need a network of storage facilities. And then the concept of warehousing verbally started coming up, whereas still they were just fancier go downs. Yeah, you got a better tube light in there now, and you had a simpler, slightly better flow. You had a security guard standing outside, right? And then of course when e-commerce started kicking up and consumption really started going up, India's per capita income started rising. You suddenly saw, people don't want to wait. People want to consume today, now, right? And that trend first started offline, not online, right? So around 2010, 2012, you started seeing, malls spring up, large retail departmental stores spring up. These guys wanted inventories to be maintained and kept in the stores, and they wanted to be serviced quickly. And then that could only be possible if you had, you have limited shelf space in a mall. It's expensive space. It's 100, 200, 300 rupees a square foot space. So you need a warehouse, either within the city or near the city or, very, very close to keep replenishing that stock, right? That same thing went online and gave the whole thing steroids, right? So it's suddenly now, instead of a person going to a store and visiting it and buying it and churning that inventory around, you could do it from anywhere. You could do it from your toilet seat, right? So, and people do that, trust me, right? So that trend started picking up, and that gave the sector a behavioral change. It gave consumption a behavioral change. People don't want to wait for stuff anymore. I still remember in 2015, I was in Germany at some NatCon exhibition giving a speech, and my wife, as usual, calls me and saying, I need this you need to bring me this back from Germany. And immediately I go on Amazon Germany. Shockingly, I think I landed at 9 a.m. in the morning, 10:30 from the taxi cab, I ordered something. And by the time I finished my day and got back home, it was sitting in my hotel room, same day delivery. And we're seeing that in India now. I thought this will take 10 years in India to come. It'll never happen. Being in the sector, that's what I thought. But it's happening. Today we're seeing same delivery. So from that godams to now being in a place where instant deliveries become a normal expectation, the sector is evolving specifically. These are no longer godams. These are now mini factories, right? There is packing, unpacking, processing, marking, labeling happening in the sector. On top of it, what recently happened is in COVID, this sector has now become part of essentials. It's no longer, logistics and warehousing is no longer real estate. You can't compare it to residential, commercial, office, nothing, right? Office is shut down, you can work from home. co-living spaces shut down, doesn't matter. People still have a place to live. Residential sales stop happening. Yeah, it affects the economy, but people who buy residences are already living somewhere, right? So it's not an essential, but logistics and supply chain became the essential backbone of servicing an economy, right? And that got highlighted. It was always there. It just got highlighted in the pandemic. When the pandemic first started, everything just shut down. There was confusion. There were trucks lying on the road. Warehouses were shutting down. Workers were migrating back, and everything went for a tailspin. But people in government quickly realized that supply chain can't stop. You have to get your packet of milk in the morning. You have to get your groceries. You have to get your essentials. So the category shift started happening now, where people who were buying iPhones online suddenly started buying a bag of rice online. And back I was talking to one of the big e-commerce CEOs, and I was telling him what really happened. And he said, pehle people wanted to go to the store and touch the rice and see, yeah, I like this quality of rice. But now in the pandemic, they were kind of forced to try buying it online, and they figure, hey, actually, this is exactly what I want. So that buying habit, which was going to change over the next 5-7 years, happened in the last few months. That catalyst which warehousing got, is a clear signal that in the next, your question was what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, and this background was a bit important. So in the next 5-10 years, definitely you're going to see a bulk load of capital come into the sector. There's no doubt about it. I don't think capital for warehousing is ever going to be a concern. I think it's about the solution of supply chain that you can offer. You will see more in-city warehousing happening. You will see more technology coming in. The throughput time for trucks in to trucks out within the parks, within the warehouses is going to be important. The heights of the buildings are going to increase. There's going to be a lot of thrust on these spaces becoming more functional. Factories and manufacturers like the ITCs of the world and the FMCGs of the world don't want to store inventory. They want it out the door, right? But once it's out the door, it's going to sit somewhere. People have now realized the value and importance of having additional storage available. If there are lockdowns, if there are pandemics, if there's a demand burst, you don't want to suffer a sale loss because there's no inventory, right? So you want pent-up inventory stored somewhere. So I think this to actually see the impact of this happening, it will take a year or two. But that's it. That's all it's going to take. It's not going to take 5 years. It's going to happen very quickly. You're seeing Amazon double down. You're seeing Flipkart double down, right? You're seeing grocers double down. They're just buying space, hiring people. So the next 10 years, I think, is going to be a mix of more high-tech space, definitely a huge push on compliance, because you realize that hygiene is a very important area. The worker and hygiene facilities, or the working conditions of laborers in these warehouses is going to become a very big factor, and I'm glad it is actually is going to become a very big factor, because people have realized that you do need high quality infrastructure for people to work comfortably. The facility needs to be ventilated. It needs to have a certain temperature. It needs to be well lit. You can't just bash into things and things falling over you and you can die. So the hygiene of this place, the general safety requirements is going to go up, which is all going to require more capital, which is all going to require more focus. So I think the highlighting of warehousing becoming essential, a lot of capital coming in, a lot of tech coming in, the space becoming much more organized. You're going to see small players who used to launch these illegal warehouses in the middle of nowhere and rent it out to a big company. I mean, that's going to stop for sure. They can't scale. You need that capital and that vision to scale. And of course, I think what's really important is you're going to see some developers which are ready to pump in capital, significant amount of capital ahead of the revenue, right? So this is not a real estate sector where it's self-liquidating, right? You can't launch a building and have apartments selling, getting some cash flow from it. No, this is a sector where all your capital goes up front. You buy the land, you get the approvals, you build the building, you deliver the building, and then you start collecting rent, right? And then after 3 or 4 years, you exit it to somebody like a Sharad's fund and try to hope to get negotiate for the last cent of cap rate and get a good return, right? So that requires a mindset. So not everybody can get into it. People say that it's already getting overcrowded. A lot of players are going to come into it. Yeah, but we saw that in office too, right? We saw that in resi too. But ultimately, it's a handful of players that are going to survive this space. So there's going to be a lot of consolidation. The smart long-term players who understand what the customers want, and they are close to their customers will survive, will grow. They're not just survive, they'll flourish. The guys who are trying to wing it because it's the flavor of the season probably won't make it. Some of them might, and I think there's going to be a lot of technology that will come into space. So that's my view. I think a little mixed, but over the next 10 years of the space.
Oh,
I think
great,
we have
Anshul.
had some great views from all our speakers, and I think this is a one segment: industrial parks, data parks, warehousing is something which everyone is very keenly looking at. They are the sunrise segments. We have a lot of questions which have come up, but again, because of the limitation of time, this discussion is we can just continue to go on. But thank you so much, all of us. Mayank, thank you for moderating this panel so well. Thank you everyone for being here. I think we would have loved to go on this, but our next panel speakers are waiting to be here. Thank you, Darshan, for joining us, sharing your views on data parks, a very important category which India is now seeing. Even the government has now come up with a policy, especially on data parks. Mr. R.K. Narayan, for bringing your views on real estate in general and logistics parks. Anshul, you shared a lot of views, gave us a whole 360-degree view of this entire segment. Thank you so much. Mr. Sharad, Gohil, thanks for joining here, being part of this discussion. Captain Srinivas, again, bringing in those very fabulous views to the discussion, and Sudeep bringing the financier views for this segment and for the real estate in general. Thanks everyone for being here with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sapna.
Thank you.